Alright, so I think this is all we need. S, A, B, C, and D. Alright, this will be the official tier list. I promised I would do this after the final tuning. We got our tuning on, was it Friday or Saturday? I'm not sure if we're getting any more tuning after this, like maybe there'll be some tuning on Mythic Week. I have no idea, but this is probably all we'll really see until the 0.5 patch, which is in, what, 2 months, I believe? And yeah, so I mean, I didn't get to test these changes yet. I don't know what it'll look like exactly. We just have rough numbers of what got buffed or nerfed, so this is purely just what I'm thinking. Anyways, with that said, let's start with the warrior specs. So, Arms Warrior. Arms Warrior didn't receive any changes except for some buffs to Colossus. It's looking pretty good, but I think there's a better pick out there. I'm gonna put it in B. Arms Warrior, it lacks utility for M+. It's pretty tanky, it does good damage, but that's about it. Fury Warrior. Fury Warrior's been banging hard. Now, the thing that sucks about Fury Warrior is that they're getting nerfed on Tuesday, and it really affects them in M+. They nerfed Fury Warrior because they were just blowing up all the shitter ads on fights like Rashinon and Damage Done. They're blowing up all the shitter ads on these fights, and it's making them look insanely good. I'm not gonna call it bad, but it's definitely inflated numbers. So they got nerfed because of that, and that really sucks. But overall, Fury Warrior is still gonna be very good. Really high damage. Battle Shout didn't get nerfed, unlike the other raid buffs. They're doing pretty competitive damage. Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior, in my opinion, is the best tank. Everyone's been asking non-stop, Dorki, what do you think is the best tank? What do you think is the best tank? I've already said in my YouTube video, I think Prot Warrior is the best tank. It's the tankiest tank. Does really good damage. But I don't think it's OP enough to belong S tier. I think S tier is like if there's no other options for that role, or if there's just one spec that's way better in that role. And currently, I don't think there's a spec there's not a tank spec that belongs up there. Where's the best, but not by that much. Assassination Rogue. Assassination Rogue. I'll just put it in low A for now. So Assassination Rogue is going to do some of the highest overall damage, but my problem with Assassination Rogue is their single target is lackluster. It's a patty spec. It's going to be really good if you want big overall damage, big AoE damage. It's kind of annoying to play around because they need constant re-stealths. You can't really chain as well. And it does have good funnel. So when there is a big prio mob and there's a bunch of mobs around, Assassination Rogue is pretty good for that. Sim Rogue, very strong. Sub Rogue, a little bit weaker than that, but Sub Rogue has been surprisingly good. It's not bad. I think Sin is just better for M+. Outlaw Rogue, I think will be the worst of the Rogue specs, but it's really not that bad. Outlaw Rogue turned out to be much better than I initially thought. It is getting nerfed, but maybe I'll put it in like the bottom of B for now. The problem with Outlaw still is target cap. It's not going to do very well in very large AoE pulls, but it's actually pretty good for once. Marksman Hunter. Marksman Hunter, decent damage. That's about it. It's a pretty weak class, all things else considered. Not much utility, shitty raid buff, okay defensively. Survival Hunter is the much better hunter. It still has the same problems, it's still a hunter, but at least it does better damage. And BM Hunter's looking pretty good in raid, but outside of raid, not very good. In the same situation as Marksman Hunter. The problem with BM Hunter is they have to pick between AoE and single target builds. And when you're playing an AoE build, you lose a ton of single target. And again, it's a hunter, doesn't bring a whole lot. Vengeance DH. I think I'm gonna put Vengeance DH down here, honestly. Demon Hunter is kind of squishy. It's only good in a caster comp, really. Their sigils are so nerfed. Stops are a lot weaker now. So like using a Fear Sigil or Grip Sigil or Stun Sigil, or not Stun Sigil, Chaos Nova is not very good because the mobs will just recast. I mean, they still do good damage, but I don't think it's good enough to put Demon Hunter out there. Havoc Demon Hunter, also not very good, but I think it's good enough to put in low B. Actually, I'm gonna put it in C for now. With Felsguard, Havoc does do a lot of burst damage, fully uncapped too, but that might be better in M+. In raid, it's not looking too hot. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna put it in B. I don't think it's as bad as the Hunter specs. I'll definitely just put Havoc in B tier. Good damage, okay single target, lots of uncapped damage. Bear Tank. Bear Tank, I would say, is the second best tank, so I'll put it right below Prot Warrior. Pretty tanky, does alright damage. Mark of the Wild is very good, and this will probably be the best Mark of the Wild. Actually, no, that's not true. It's not gonna be the best Mark of the Wild spec, but it's a really good Mark of the Wild spec. Feral Druid. Feral Druid, I would have initially put in D, but I don't think it's that bad now. You're already getting some buffs. Feral Druids will be okay. Their damage is super lackluster though. They lack damage, they're not particularly great at surviving. And with that said, Resto Druid. Resto Druid did get a pretty big buff. They got an 8% healing buff. Resto Druids were looking really rough, but Now I think it's just a B tier spec. It's decent. It's not bad. It still brings Mark of the Wild. It still does very good damage. It's actually one of the highest DPS healers. Boomkin. Dude, Boomkin stonks Rising. I might even put Boomkin in S tier. I don't know, but Boomkin's got a big buff. Now, they're still gonna suck in raid. Don't get me wrong, their single target stinks, but they got buffed big time. Their AoE is gonna pop off. So when I was beta testing dungeons as a Boomkin, I was already doing competitive AoE with the best specs in the game. After this buff, they're gonna be like doing easily the highest AoE. This class is insane in AoE damage. Its single target is still a little bit lackluster, but it's all good. And they bring Mark of the Wild, the best buff in the game now. Boomkin is looking great. I actually want to play Boomkin myself. Frost DK. Frost DK deserves the first S tier. Frost DK surprisingly didn't get nerfed. Frost DK in Breath build is absolutely insane in M+, dominating the meters big time. It's unkillable, doesn't bring a raid buff, but it brings big fuck damn best DPS. You can still play Obliteration if you want. It's a minor loss. You'll still top meters in Obliteration, but currently Breath build is just the best. Unholy DK. Unholy DK owns pretty hard. If it wasn't for Frost DK, Unholy would look so much better. Nobody's playing Unholy right now just because everyone's playing Frost, but Unholy actually pops off. This is the year of DKs. I think Unholy DK has the highest uncapped AoE. I'm not too sure, but it's some of the highest uncapped AoE. It's just a little bit lacking on lower target counts. If you're fighting like 2 mobs, 3 mobs, single target, Unholy DK is not that hot, but in larger AoE, Unholy DK is insane. Blood DK. Blood DK, it's between high B and low A. I'm not too sure yet. I think I'm gonna lean towards high B. So if they fixed Bloodied Blade, it's a talent. Before it was only increasing your base strength, now it's increasing your total strength, and it's a pretty big AoE damage increase. The problem with DK is they don't bring a raid buff. They're susceptible to dying in larger pulls and higher scaling dungeons, but most of you guys probably won't really notice Blood DK's weaknesses until you get to the very top end. I think for most players, Blood DK might be one of the best tanks, which is why I'm kind of like, you know, in between. It's definitely a really good tank though. Devastation Evoker. Dev Evoker stinks. I'm gonna put it down here. Devastation, if you're just in such a weird spot. Now, the last time I've seen a Devastation play on beta, they were playing some like Firestorm build, some like Firestorm reset build, and it seemed very lackluster. I mean, they did get buffed a little bit recently. They got a pretty large single target buff. It was to Disintegrate, which is like half of their damage, and Eternity Surge, which is like 10 to 15% of their damage. So they got pretty big buffs. Maybe it's not this bad, but for now, I'm just gonna put it down here. It's somewhere down here for sure. Augmentation Evoker. We're back, boys. Once again, Augmentation is at the top. This will be for surviving the highest keys. If you want to be able to live the highest keys, you kind of need an Augmentation Evoker. What happened was during beta testing, the plus 12 affix, the damage portion of it wasn't working. So we were placebo testing the entire time. We were like, oh, these 14, 15 keys are manageable. We don't need an augmentation to survive. We could just bring another DPS. Like, hey, we could bring another Frost DK and just do more damage. But it turns out that the affix wasn't working. And when they fixed the affix, suddenly plus 13 and 14 is hurting really bad. Tanks are falling over left and right. I'm out here trying to play a Demon Hunter tank and I'm getting absolutely destroyed. Healers, they're just struggling to keep people alive. So augmentation is the key to staying alive, even after all these nerfs. Aug's been nerfed like 5 times since its inception. It's still overpowered. The only way you can fix Aug is by removing its defensive values. Preservation Evoker. Prez is actually one of the best healers right now. In terms of pure numbers, Preservation is insane. I'm gonna put it in top of 8 for now. The problem with Prez is, 1, it has no real raid buff. Raid buff stinks. 2 is, it's extremely clunky to play around. You can make Prez work. It's just, you need your team to be positioned well the entire time. The Prez needs to be positioned well. You need to trust in the Prez too, because the way Prez works is, it's extremely reactive healing. You can be 10% 1 second, and literally the next second, you can be 100% HP. It makes it really awkward for your DPS and tank. You never know if they're gonna be dead or alive. But Prez, really good. It does big numbers. They're really like big healing, big damage, probably the best in terms of like all the healers numerically. Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin, not looking good, guys. I think I'm gonna put it down here. Actually, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say. It was not looking good before, and it got a nerf. It was already looking kind of bad, and it got nerfed. For raid, it would have been insane, but for M+, not too hard. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's really not that bad. I'm gonna put it down here. I'll be a little bit lenient. I'm gonna put it next to Resto Druid. I don't think there's any healers that are that awful. Resto Druid got buffed 8%. Holy Paladin's got 6% healing nerf. Kind of balances out a bit. Red Paladins. Red Paladins seem alright. I'll put them in like middle of B. They're alright. I mean, they do like okay cleave, okay single target. They're a lot better in raid than they are in M+. They do have good utility still. I mean, Red Paladins always had good utility. And the biggest thing of all is Red Paladin. It's very easy to do good damage. You don't have to be the best player in the world to do 80% of how good a Red Paladin is. So I think it's like perfectly mid. Protection Paladin. Protection Paladin was looking really bad, but I don't think it's terrible. I'm putting it in C. They did fix a bunch of stuff with Templar, making it a little bit better damage-wise. Defensively, it's still very weak. I think Prop Paladin will be much better when the 0.5 patch rolls around and, you know, they make some adjustments. Prop Paladin still has one really good thing going for it. It's got the best utility of all the tanks. The interrupts especially, the interrupts are just insane now. Because like I said, you can't stop mobs anymore. Mobs will just recast, but you can Avenger Shield silence them. This priest is looking absolutely nutty, but I don't think it'll be the best. This priest, they buffed the class, and apparently there's some bug with like Shadow Covenant or their Void Wraith or whatever. I don't know how this class works exactly. Greg's been playing a lot of it, but it's only good because of the bug. Apparently the bug is like 15% of their healing or so. I don't know. Maybe if they fix the bug, it's gonna be complete dog shit. But right now, Disc is looking really good. Number wise, it's like right there with Prez. And it does give PI. And it does give damn buff. Holy Priest. Holy Priest is probably looking to be the worst healer at the moment. I don't think it's that bad though. Honestly, I'd probably put it in like the lowest B, just because I don't think like any healer is really that bad. I'll put it over here. I honestly don't think there's any healers that are that bad. In fact, I'll just put Mistweaver here too. Like honestly, all these healers are like very good enough. And I'll just move the final healer, Resto Shaman, which I think will be the best healer. Resto Shaman, their Ancestral Vigor and Downpour is absolutely insane. Can give up to 20% increased max HP. It's very noticeable. Resto Shamans also do very decent damage. They have really good healing. They have tons of cooldowns. They also bring a 12-second range interrupt. It's super good to have. And they just have like a lot of utility for this season. Like it's crazy how much utility Resto Shaman has for these dungeons. Curse Dispel is massive in these dungeons. Poison Cleansing Totem is ridiculously good. Tremor Totem in Mist of Tyrannus Life, and even in like Siege of Borealis. Resto Shaman is so good right now. Their raid buff too is ridiculously good. Sky Fury, it's like a massive buff for Frosty K's. The Mastery buff is really big for all these Mastery specs. Resto Shaman is really good right now. Shadow Priest. This class is not it. It's getting buffed, but it's still not it. I think after it buffs, I'll put it up a little bit though. I think after it buffs, it's definitely not the worst. Shadow Priest works really well in caster comps. I can see Shadow Priest popping off if you're playing, you know, the classic Aug, Mage, Shadow Priest. But I feel like there are just better classes you can bring than a Shadow Priest currently. And it probably won't be long before Blizzard buffs the hell out of Shadow Priest and it just becomes one of the best specs again. Windwalker. Windwalker has actually been popping off. Windwalker's been doing really well. So Windwalker in their M+ build can actually do high single target, and they do really good low target AoE, like 5 targets, 4 targets. Windwalker is one of the best. The problem with Windwalker is their uncapped AoE is pretty bad. When we're looking at 10 targets, a Windwalker is doing complete dog water damage. I've played with a lot of Windwalkers, a lot of big Windwalker mains, and they've been popping off. Brewmaster Monk. Brewmaster is unfortunately the worst tank right now. But I mean, this is the best Brewmaster has been in a long time. Like, I think you can actually do pretty well with Brewmaster. It's just these other specs, these other tanks are just much better. Destrolock. Destrolock is complete beans. Destrolock, I'm pretty sure, is the worst Warlock spec at the moment. It is getting buffed. I don't know how much of the buffs will help it, but it is looking like a pretty big improvement. So I'll put it in C. Otherwise, I'd probably put it down in D. And Demolock. Demolock's a little better. Demolock honestly does pretty well in M+. Affliction, on the other hand, Affliction is good. In fact, I'm gonna put it in S tier. Affliction will be the first caster outside of Aug in S tier. This class does so much damage. It's also very tanky. But, I don't know. Maybe there might be too many S tiers now that I'm looking at it. Because you know what, I'll put up the rest of the S tiers. Arcane Mage, I mean, this one's an obvious S tier. Arcane Mage is ridiculous. It does so much pyro damage. Its AoE is a little bit weaker compared to, like, say, Frosty K or Affliction, but that pyro damage is big, and the Arcane Intellect is very big. The nerfs are also very tiny. They got barely touched. I'm surprised they nerfed Arcane by only, like, 2%. I guess they just really like Arcane Mage. Yo, so some post-editing changes here. Arcane Mage and Fury Warrior got some decent sized nerfs after this. They're both still looking good, but I'm hesitant on putting Arcane at S now, so I'd probably drop it down to an A. They already got some pretty decent sized nerfs before, and their Trinkets Brewmaster is getting nerfed. So with this on top, I'm not sure if I would have Arcane that high up. Enhancement Shaman and Ellie too, I'm gonna also put these in S tier. Enhance and Ellie, they do ridiculous damage. And also, like I said, the Sky Fury is really big, but they also compete with Resto Shaman. I don't know, all the Shaman specs are ridiculous right now. Shamans are looking great. Now, Enhance did get a massive nerf though. Enhanced nerf is like, I heard it's like anywhere from like 7 to 8%, and their tier set's also getting nerfed, but they also have the best tier set in the game, so it's hard to say. I mean, Enhance has been popping off without 4 set. If you slap on 4 set, this class just like shoots to the moon. And Frost Mage, I'm gonna put at the top of A tier. It's looking a little worse than Arcane, but it's still ridiculously good. Actually, do I even put it in A tier or S tier? I'll put it in A. And then Fire Mage, this class stinks. I mean, it got buffed, right? So maybe Fire Mage. You know what? I'm gonna delete the D category. I don't think we need a D category. I mean, Blizzard actively went out their way to buff all these specs. Like, these specs all got buffed. All these specs here, all 5 of these, they got buffed, right? Like, surely they don't belong in D tier. C is fine. They probably need a bigger buff, but yeah, this is fine where it belongs. But yeah, this is the official tier list after the final tuning changes. We've finally got the tier list for all the OP specs and all the bad specs. Maybe there will be more tuning. I don't know, but it's very unlikely. Why the fuck is Boomkin up there? Boomkin is gonna do ridiculous AoE. Boomkin, I'm pretty sure, does some of the highest AoE after the buffs. In fact, I've thought about putting it even higher. Pretty sure it belongs higher. Such a coper. Okay, what part of it is cope? Tell me, guys, what part of Boomkin being great is cope? Boomkin was doing competitive AoE with the rest of these specs before the buffs, and they are getting massive buffs. So imagine doing competitive AoE, and then you're getting 6% overall damage buff, and you're getting 20% on Starfall, and Lunar's Calling is doing more main target damage. This shit's gonna be good as hell in AoE. Like, overall damage, it's gonna be big. Okay, yeah, like here's a good run to look at. Look at this, 13 Dawnbreaker. Look at me, I'm popping off. Dorki Bear, 4.4 million. Hold on, let's look at some of the earlier posts. You guys even play Boomkin? What do you mean I don't play Boomkin? Look at my AoE damage. I'm popping off an AoE. And you're telling me this is getting buffed by like, so I don't even know how much my Starfall is. My Starfall is probably doing like 30% here, so 20% of that, and then another 6%. So it's probably gonna be like at least 10% buff to this. So I'd be doing like what? Almost 5 mil in this pull. And then, you know, this pull too, I'd probably be doing like another 5 mil here too. And then here I'd probably do like 4 mil or so. Okay, now here's the shitty part. Yeah, I mean, now the boss damage, like, of course, the boss damage is gonna stink, right? But it's not the worst. Like, it's still bringing Mark of the Wild. Like, see, like, it's not that bad, right? This is getting buffed by like 10%. So I'd probably be at like 800 something K. Like, I don't know. You guys tell me. Is Boomkin gonna be shit after that? Maybe. But I think Boomkin's gonna be good. And it's bringing Mark of the Wild.